Department of Justice says it's working overtime to combat organized crime nationwide, and that includes working to take down gangs in Memphis. U.S. Attorney D. Michael Donovan saying that Gangster Disciples and the Vice Lords are major gangs in our area. Well, back in January, MPD officers say they found the leader of the Vice Lords dead in a car.
Currently, the M-Town has several long-standing gangs in almost every part of the city, with each group having its own members, leadership, and areas where they're active. The people who live in these neighborhoods understand which crews have deep roots and which ones carry more influence. This structure has been in place for years, shaping how the city moves every day.
This murder last week didn't get much media attention, in part because police just weren't saying anything.
And there are groups in Memphis whose influence has moved far beyond the streets and into the prison system. So when something happens involving someone with recognized status inside of these organizations, the impact can be felt in more than one place.
The Local 24 News has learned behind the scenes, police were very concerned.
It's a pattern that the city would grow all too familiar with, where one event creates attention across both neighborhood and the facilities at the same time.
It was a hit of a former gang leader so high up, our state prison system put every lockup in Tennessee on lockdown. The TBI put law enforcement agencies on alert, and there are real fears that remain tonight that the killing could spark a gang war.
But Memphis only has a few organizations that stand out because of their size, history, and national presence. And their names are well known, and their reach covers multiple areas of the city. These groups have remained active through changing generations, maintaining a steady level of influence, and throughout the years, the organization tied to this story would grow into becoming one of the most powerful in the entire city.
Lord, forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack making backflip. Telly Hank with the action. With the vital speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews, how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby Maine. Just caught a touchdown from the...
Visions of balloons and teddy bears near crime tape left behind. Common sights in certain parts of Memphis.
Somebody took my baby.
She points to areas like 38106, the South Memphis area, where the most homicides occurred in the last 2 years.
A 3-year investigation across several cities led to dozens of arrests and sweeping charges today against 40 people alleged to be a part of a gang called the Vice Lords.
On top of that, the Vice Lords are a very notorious street gang that's known for just how violent they operate.
In 2000, a new leader emerged. 30-year-old Ronald Pokey Terry. Like country, he hailed from Chicago.
The rumor was, after Country got locked up, that was more of an opportunity, is the best way to put it, for Ron Terry to come down and try to take control on the street. He had come here from Chicago to clean up Memphis, and clean up Memphis being to get some of these out of control, reckless young Vice Lords in order.
You being from Memphis, how you feel like that shit migrated from Chicago to Memphis? How you feel like that shit happened?
I think well, from my understanding, I think Big Pokey.
Okay.
You remember Pokey?
Nah,
Pokey?
do your homework.
Do your homework on Pokey.
Okay, I gotta do my homework.
Yeah, do your homework on. He came from the land though, and he came down there like back in the days.
I heard the story. Do your homework. That's all I was trying to figure out. Like, do niggas know?
Yeah, most definitely. This outstanding brother. He was very unique though.
I'm fucking glad.
Like he was very unique, and I feel like
like how do you feel like he was able to touch for them in Memphis? Like, man, that's what we on at. Cause put it like that, that's some powerful shit to do. Is what I'm getting.
Iron Fist. I think that's what I think. You know, like I said, rest in peace to bro. But I think that was bro demise. Like that's what causes demise. The Iron Fist factor.
He could recite to you the Vice Lord history. He appeared to have a belief in all the principles of the Vice Lords. These kids, these 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, they feared him.
By the year 2000, the city of Memphis was entering the new millennium with 147 murders, a number that pales in comparison to the totals seen today, which have nearly doubled, but at the time reflected exactly what many residents believed Memphis had become, a gang-plagued city. For decades, neighborhood crews, hybrid sets, and national organizations would embed themselves into the landscape, shaping the identity of the entire infrastructure. And amongst them, one of the most powerful, the Vice Lords, would stand out as one of the biggest and longest standing gangs in Memphis's history. Their presence would date back to the early waves of Chicago influence in the 1980s that would never fade. Chi-Town's footprint in the city was deep enough that multiple branches, sets, and factions operated at once, each tied to its own street politics. And in and around this time, a major figure by the name of Charles Country Thompson, a Chicago-born traveling Vice Lord leader, would be removed from Memphis's streets after being convicted for ordering the murder of a corrections officer. And that event would create a vacuum inside of the Vice Lord structure at a moment when the city of Memphis was already struggling under the weight of unparalleled violence. And after arriving in Memphis in the year of 2000, Ronald Big Pokey Terry would quickly go from being a new face from Chicago to one of the city's most recognizable Vice Lord figures. In a later court appearance, he would describe being inducted into the Vice Lords in August of 1998, eventually rising to the rank of 5-star Universal Elite inside of the unknown Vice Lords, a faction that Memphis police would note sat on top of the city's hierarchy. His introduction to the city would be embraced by some, but contested by others, and according to court documentation, his rise in Memphis's gang structure would put him in direct conflict with another high-ranking Vice Lord that would be identified by gangland as DeMarcus Poncho Danner, whom the court described as a 5-star branch elite. In 2006, Big Pokey would go on trial for attempting to murder Poncho, and before changing his plea to guilty during closing arguments, he would deliver one of the most detailed breakdowns of the Vice Lord internal structure ever recorded inside of a courtroom.
They form a committee from each branch. That will make up the nation, not no one person.
After serving several years in prison for the shooting, he would be paroled in 2016, returning to South Memphis, still regarded as a former chief of chiefs, with influence that possibly still stretched throughout the neighborhoods. And when his life was cut short 3 years later, in 2019, the shock would not stop at the street level. It would travel from the same South Memphis neighborhood he once influenced into the entire Tennessee prison system.
Police in Memphis are investigating the death of a well-known gang leader. Jessica Gertler has the details.
Police swarmed a white Cadillac that plowed through a fence near the airport Thursday afternoon. Sitting inside, officers say they found a woman, Candid Sanders, and a man, Ronald Terry, both shot to death.
There's a homicide investigation still pending with regard to his death, so I can't, comment on that.
Shelby County Assistant District Attorney Paul Hagerman knew Terry. He was one of the prosecutors when Terry, or who many knew as Big Pokey, went to trial in 2006 for trying to kill a fellow gang member he thought betrayed him.
During the trial, there was testimony that he was the leader of the Vice Lords here in Memphis, that he had come from Memphis, from Chicago, and from Illinois to help organize and lead the Vice Lords here in Memphis.
Other witnesses confirmed Terry's high-ranking role.
He had about a 17-year sentence. He probably served about 11 years of that sentence until he was released fairly recently.
Police are now trying to figure out what led to his murder. What's clear, hours after, the Tennessee Department of Corrections locked down every prison in the state due to information received from external law enforcement partners. They said it was out of an abundance of caution and for the safety and security of the department's inmate staff and facilities. As of today, only one facility in East Tennessee remains on partial lockdown. A private prison in Clifton has also been on lockdown since last Thursday, when a spokesperson said there was 2 separate inmate-on-inmate assaults and 4 correctional officers were injured while trying to break it up. The state is now investigating what caused those fights.
There is something circulating out there.
Memphis Police Association President Mike Williams also voiced his concerns to WREG this week after rumors spread on social media the Vice Lords threatened to put a hit out on law enforcement. As of now, the Tennessee Department of Corrections told us they are unaware of any specific and/or
This murder last week didn't get much media attention, in part because police just weren't saying anything. But Local 24 News has learned behind the scenes, police were very concerned. It was a hit of a former gang leader so high up, our state prison system put every lockup in Tennessee on lockdown. The TBI put law enforcement agencies on alert, and there are real fears that remain tonight that the killing could spark a gang war. Here's local I-Team investigator Jenny DePrizio.
This was the scene last Thursday. 2 people shot and killed while sitting inside this car near the Memphis International Airport. We didn't know it at the time, but Vice Lord leader Ronald Terry was murdered, and so was the woman with him. The day after the murder, the Tennessee Department of Corrections locked down every prison in the state. We're told there was concern fights could break out in Tennessee prisons due to Terry's murder. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation issued a vague warning for law enforcement to be vigilant. Word had spread that a hit may have been put out on law enforcement officers. Mike Williams with the Memphis Police Association says warnings like this are not uncommon.
When they hear something like this, yes, it makes them more alert and aware. Officers are always receiving threats. Officers are always in the middle of violent situations. They're dealing with gang members all the time. They're dealing with violent fleeing felons. They're dealing with all of this.
Terry was on trial for attempted murder of a fellow gang member and pleaded guilty in 2006. He was released in 2016. It's reported that prior to his release, he renounced his gang membership. It's unclear if he still had gang ties.
I'm not sure of all of the specific rules and regulations within this organization, but I believe one thing. Once you reach elite chief status, whether it's members you disciplined, rivals you went to war with, or people who didn't like the way you ruled the organization, you're in it for a lifetime. There's really no clean exit, not at that level. So when someone like Big Pokey was killed, the impact didn't stop at the crime scene. Hours after the shooting, state prisons all across Tennessee were placed on lockdown. The Department of Corrections said it was out of an abundance of caution, based on information passed from outside law enforcement partners. Their public statement focused on officer security, inmate safety, and keeping the institution stable. But if you knew better, that wasn't the explanation that you believed. On the streets, rumor would spread fast that the killing looked too precise, too sudden, and too tied to rank to seem random. On the streets and inside the facilities, people will whisper that Pokey's murder might have come at the hands of another gang, a move big enough to trigger a statewide response. And to the people in the know, The lockdown wasn't just caution, it was preparation. And roughly 5 years later, when the feds would invade Memphis, exactly the kind of sweep the city is seeing right now, the real details will begin to surface behind sealed affidavits and a federal investigation. They would uncover something different, something more sinister. Big Pokey's death didn't come from an outside organization at all. The man they believe pulled the trigger came from the same organization Pokey was sent from Chicago to rein in.
In a gang-related murder, authorities say Vincent Grant, known as V/, was a member of the unknown Vice Lords here in Memphis. The gang's chief was killed in broad daylight in 2019, so the gang sought retaliation. They discovered it wasn't another gang, but an internal member who was responsible. On January 16th, the feds say Grant and other members, Edward Allen and DeAndre Rogers, drove the person to an apartment. Grant provided guns, and the other two members killed the person they thought responsible. Grant was convicted on several charges. He'll be sentenced in September and faces life in prison.
I'm not sure of all of the specific rules and regulations within this organization, but I believe one thing. Once you reach elite chief status, whether it's members you disciplined, rivals you went to war with, or people who didn't like the way you ruled the organization, you're in it for a lifetime. There's really no clean exit, not at that level. So when someone like Big Pokey was killed, the impact didn't stop at the crime scene. Hours after the shooting, state prisons all across Tennessee were placed on lockdown. The Department of Corrections said it was out of an abundance of caution, based on information passed from outside law enforcement partners. Their public statement focused on officer security, inmate safety, and keeping the institution stable. But if you knew better, that wasn't the explanation that you believed. On the streets, rumor would spread fast that the killing looked too precise, too sudden, and too tied to rank to seem random. On the streets and inside the facilities, people would whisper that Pokey's murder might have come at the hands of another gang, a move big enough to trigger a statewide response. And to the people in the know, the lockdown wasn't just caution, it was preparation. And roughly 5 years later, when the feds would invade Memphis, exactly the kind of sweep the city is seeing right now, the real details will begin to surface behind sealed affidavits and a federal investigation. They would uncover something different, something more sinister. Big Pokey's death didn't come from an outside organization at all. The man they believe pulled the trigger came from the same organization Pokey was sent from Chicago to rein in.